Okay, we got 38 people on, and it is time to start this thing. I think Russell's still driving. He was gonna pray for us. But William, how about offering us prayer to kick this thing off?
Our Father in heaven, we're grateful for the opportunity to be here to gather together as ranchers and land stewards and farmers to talk about how to be better stewards of the land and to improve our businesses. We would ask thee that thou would send thy spirit to us, that we may learn things, that we can be edified, and that we can improve our situations and bless our communities. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Amen. Thank you, William. So that was William DeMille. He's our colleague. He works on the ranch and has his own business, and encourage you to check out what he does at Georgic Revolution. You can maybe throw that in the chat if you want, William, because he's got a class later tonight, and encourage you guys to join that. So as we get started here, if this is your first time to what we do here at AgSteward, we do these things twice a month, the second and fourth Thursdays. We also do more extensive virtual summits. We've got another one coming up the 23rd and 24th of April, and we'll give you some more information about that and a 2-day class that we have coming up in May. And it's a privilege for us to be able to serve our fellow farmers and ranchers, help you to navigate some of the challenges that we're currently facing. And when we thought about topics for, kind of what we needed in society right now, I'm always asked the question, and literally on a weekly basis, and if I'm in a group speaking, multiple times in that group, how do we get started? What do we do to get started? And so, that's going to be the topic of this. It's the catchy name that we put out there on social media was Ranching from Scratch. I wish that was original. My friend Aaron Hansen actually wrote a book called Ranching from Scratch, and so I didn't plagiarize it. I just borrowed it. And I think the principle is such that we can talk about it from different angles. And so I've invited a couple of my friends, colleagues in the ranching industry, and Zack Wakley and Aaron Kesler to speak to us. We're grateful to have them here. I've known them for a long time. So Zack is actually, in full disclosure, he married my wife's sister, and he's worked for us at different times, and we've run cattle for him, and we've been able to watch and see him grow. Aaron, as somebody who started, well, both of them started with nothing but a dream. Aaron moved to Nevada, and he'll tell you his story, and we've watched him as he's been able to implement kind of a really unique strategy of buying and selling ranches, and each time increasing his size and also his net worth, utilizing debt, but in a very strategic way so that it is working for him. There is not a set recipe of how to get started farming and ranching. And that's, I'd be doing you a disservice if I handed you a recipe and said, here you go, do this, because that would be a guaranteed recipe for failure. Everybody is unique. Every situation is unique, and our missions are unique. And so we're not going to say, do what these guys did, but we are going to say, learn from them, because what they've done has been successful. My situation, if you're new here, I'm a third generation rancher. My wife and I ranch in northeastern Nevada, Ruby Valley and Clover Valley. We're the parents of 9 children. We currently, custom grazing is our main enterprise, meaning we bring cattle in for season, send them home in the wintertime. We have similar struggles to all of you. We're feeling the pinch of inflation, overhead costs rising. We are looking currently at what our enterprise mix needs to be this year so we can be profitable. And by all means, we do not have all the answers here, myself or with our company AgSteward, but we do know some pretty smart people, and we like to connect you with them. So a couple of those smart people are here with us today, and I think we'll probably start with you, Aaron. Again, if you guys are just joining us, so 45 different participants. If you haven't already, type in the chat where you're from. Feel free to turn your videos on. We like to be able to have a little bit more interaction as if we were, sitting down across the table from each other. But so Aaron, tell us, I guess, first of all, kind of where you are now and a little bit about your family, and then we can back up and start from maybe more of the beginning of how you got started ranching.
Okay, I'm Aaron Kesler, and I currently live in White River Valley, Nevada, which is 30 miles from Ely. And anyways, I ranch with my family, it's my wife, and we've got 8 kids ranging from 19 down to 6 months. We run 700 to 800 head of cattle on this ranch. And then I also have another ranch up in Elko County, and that ranch runs a couple thousand head of cattle. Anyways, I currently have that one leased out for the time being. I found that it was, well, for my situation, it was more economical for me to lease it out at this time. Anyways, I might eventually run it, but that will be in the future. But anyways, that's kind of what I'm currently doing. So Jared just kind of didn't give me a whole lot of instruction, just kind of asked me to tell you how I started. And so I'll just, a lot of people, it takes them, quite a while to figure out what they want to do in life. And I was kind of the same thing. It took me a couple of years, but by the time I was 2 or 3, I knew that's all I ever wanted to do was ranch. And so ever since I was just a little kid, my dad didn't ranch, but both my grandparents were in agriculture. I had uncles that farmed and ranched. And so ever since I was a little kid, I loved to go with them down to their farms and ranches and just help them out. And anyways, probably when I was 14 or 15, they kind of put me on the payroll at $200 a month. And so it wasn't a lot of money, but I also would have worked for free because I enjoyed it so much. I loved it. Anyways, as I was kind of pondering on what I was going to say, I would say one of the big things that I guess it helped me out was the desire. I just really, that's what I always wanted to do. When I was 19, I went on a couple-year mission for my church, and I got home at 21. And then, like I said, I always wanted to ranch, but I didn't know exactly how to get in the ranching business. As a lot of you guys know, it takes money to buy a ranch or buy a farm. And so anyways, probably about a week after I got off my mission, I happened to be at an equipment auction, and I ended up buying a semi for a few $1,000s in an old trailer. And I thought, if I can't own a ranch at this point, I'm going to haul cows and hay. And so I did that for, 8-9 months. And I'd saved up a few $1,000s. I think I had about $20,000. And there was a farm for sale. And I grew up around Fillmore, Utah. There was a 300-acre farm for sale, and they wanted $1,200 an acre. And I remember talking to the owner, and he wanted, and farm ground, so it was all laser level, full water rights, good water rights on it. But this would have been in 2002. And anyways, farm ground in that area had never brought more than $1,000 an acre at the time. And so that farm had actually been for sale for about a year, maybe even a couple of years, and nobody would buy it because everyone thought it was too high priced. And at the time it probably was. But I remember him telling me that he would owner finance it. If I'd give him my $20,000 down, he'd owner finance it. It wasn't, he wanted 10% interest. And I remember at the time it didn't pencil. Hay was only worth $70, $80 a ton. It probably put up 400 to 500, about 4 to 5 ton an acre. But I guess I just jumped at it because I thought, you know what, this is an opportunity. The owner was willing to work with me. And so I went ahead and bought it. And then I intended on staying there and running it. About a year and a half later, I found a ranch for sale. I just happened to be driving by over around Salina, and I saw a for sale sign, and I called on this ranch. And anyways, my desire was always to ranch more than farm. I grew up doing both. I enjoy both, but my passion was ranching. And so I called on that ranch, and it was kind of the same situation. It'd been for sale for several years. The owner was a little older, wanted to retire. And anyways, he was to a position that he just wanted to get it gone. And so I remember him telling me that he says, if you can come up with $200,000 down, he's like, I will owner finance you. And it was included a ranch, 350 cows, equipment. And of course, at that time, I didn't have a penny to my name. I was still in debt on my other farm. But he told me if I came up with $200,000 down, this was in August. He's like, if you come up with that $200,000 by 1st of October, he's like, I'll give you this year's calf crop. And so I remember going to the bank and telling the bank the deal. And I said, hey, 350 calves, that is close to being worth $200,000. And the bank agreed, and they gave me a loan. And so I ended up buying that ranch. The bank also wanted me to sell that farm. They're like, you're in pretty deep debt. And so I ended up selling that farm, and I sold it for a profit. I sold it for more than I bought it for. And the interesting thing was, when I bought that, I remember all the neighbors and everyone in the community they were laughing and telling me I was going to be broke within a few years, and telling me how farm ground had never sold for $1,200 an acre. But 2 years later, I sold it for quite a bit more money. And like I said, I never really intended on buying and selling, but as I made that first move, I was like, boy, that was more profitable than farming it for a couple of years. But anyways, I had that ranch for a few years, and I got the calves that fall, sold them. Make a long story short, there was the owner stole a bunch of cattle from me. It was kind of we ended up in a lawsuit. He wasn't quite honest. I didn't feel like anyways. But anyways, so I ended up selling that ranch, and that's when I came to Nevada. And then I originally leased a ranch out here, a 500 head cattle ranch. And when I came out here, I had a little bit of money, but I wouldn't say a lot. The lawsuit and what was going on with that other ranch and some cattle getting stolen, I'd kind of lost some of my equity, but I didn't let that get me down. But so I leased a ranch, and we ran about 500 head of cows. Went to the bank, and I borrowed the money to buy those cows. And my goal was, in 5 years, when my lease was up, I would have my cow herd paid off. And so I remember my wife and I, we lived in a tent for 9 months when we first moved out here, not because we couldn't afford to live in a house, but we were just trying to save every penny we could to pay down debt. Finally, when winter came, she said it was cold enough, we needed to get a house. So we ended up doing that. And then so at the end of the 5 years, we had those cows paid off, and then I ended up buying another ranch up the valley, and from there, I've owned several different ranches over the years. Currently, I have a couple of ranches, and anyways, one thing that and I started with nothing. My family had zero money. The only thing I've ever been given was when I was 16. I remember my dad gave me a quarter and says, hey, don't say I never give you nothing. And that's all I've ever been given. But I would just say that just a lot of hard work, and the desire to have something. And I wasn't scared of debt. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's sure worked out good for me, but I've also seen other guys that will take on too much debt, and it'll hurt them for sure. But I know a lot of places I've bought, they never penciled the day I bought them. They didn't really make sense. But 5 years later, 10 years later, I'm sure glad I bought everything I ever did. And so inflation has definitely been in my favor, or inflation or appreciation or whatever you want to call it. How long is that going to last? I don't know, but I guess I also have a lot of people ask me how I get started, and I guess kind of what I've told them is, first of all, you need to have a desire, a really driving desire. And then also I would say, don't overspend, live within your means. I have taken on a lot of debt. I've borrowed millions of dollars in my life. But one thing I've never done is I've never borrowed money on something that didn't make me money. I will borrow money on a farm, on a ranch, on cows, but I never borrow a penny for something that will not make me money, that doesn't have some kind of a return. And so I think that's kind of key, watch your, don't go in consumer debt, or at least that's my opinion. Business debt is fine if it makes sense. Anyways, that's kind of in a nutshell, kind of what I've done. Is there anything else you want me to talk about, Jared, or?
No, that's really good. Maybe we'll have Zach go, and then we can just open it up for some questions and things, and kind of whoever wants to answer the questions, we can do that. So thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. And again, I can vouch for Aaron. We've worked with him, and definitely have watched and seen how he treats this like a business, right, Aaron? It's way more than a hobby for you. I mean, you like what you do, but you're prayerful, you're methodical about what you do, and it definitely is a business, right?
Yes, it is. It is. I mean, I think on things, I ponder things, I'll run a pencil. And a lot of times I just go off my gut feeling. Like I say, there's things that I've bought that doesn't make sense, but my gut feeling says buy it, and I just do it, But yeah, I mean, I definitely really try to, ponder on things and run the pencil, But if that's all you ever do is run a pencil, I don't think anyone would buy anything, because it just a lot of times, I mean, you got to be cautious, and it's got to make some sense, but also these ranches and farms are really tough to pencil. So I guess I don't know what to say as far as if you wait until you find something that pencils. I've just seen friends do that, and they never end up buying anything because but you also don't want to just be out of control either, though.
Yeah. That's good. Well, thank you, Aaron. Yeah, hang on there. Zach, are you still there?
Yep. You hear me?
No. Yep, we can hear you. We can hear
Okay,
you.
so
So kind of tell us where you're from, and then you can back up and kind of tell your story, how you got started ranching.
okay, I'm Zack Wakley. I'm from Ruby Valley, Nevada. And like Jared mentioned earlier, I'm married. His wife and my wife are sisters. So I grew up in Marsh Valley, Idaho. I didn't grow up there. I guess I was born there. My family had a ranch that been the family. They settled, my ancestors sell the ranch. And my dad lost the ranch in the 80s when the whole interest rate was just crazy. So after that point, I was probably 9 then when that happened. We kind of moved on, bounced around. And I knew all along I wanted to ranch. Very young, I just wanted to be a cowboy. And so we ended up in Elko, living at, about 18 miles east of Elko, Nevada, when I was 11, 12. And still wanting to ranch. And I ended up, when I got old enough, I could kind of go do day work, cowboy for places. I went cowboy for places. And started riding a bunch of colts for guys when I got in high school. And I ended up trading colt riding, starting for cattle. I'd trade for a bred heifer. So I kind of built my herd that way in high school, up to 20 head or something, but always afraid of debt. My dad and mom warned me against debt. They're like, you don't want to get in debt, pay cash for everything, whatever, but you never got anywhere. So anyways, just like Aaron, I went on a mission for our church for a couple of years. came home, met my wife, and then we end up working on a ranch in Nebraska in the Sandhills. And the guy who owned that ranch was a pretty wealthy man. And he made it in cattle. He had big feed yards back in eastern Nebraska. And so one day we were talking, he asked me, he said, what do you want to do with life when you grow up? I said, well, I want a ranch. I want to build a cow herd. And he said, never use your own money. And it took me a while to let that one sink in, because I grew up knowing, shoot, stay out of debt, use money, but use cash. And then we end up coming back from Nebraska, actually worked for Jared then for a while. And I worked for Jared for a few years, and we end up able to lease a ranch south of where we are now for a couple of years. And kind of built our cow herd there, and it was kind of a droughted out ranch. There's nothing there much, but it was an awesome starter ranch. And then we had a chance to go back to Nebraska and be partners with my wife's uncle on a fairly good sized ranch to lease with him. So it took kind of a little bit to make up our minds if we wanted to do that. So we went out and we ended up going out there, and it was a good experience, but man, it was just so expensive. We weren't getting anywhere building our cow herd there. And we end up coming back to Nevada. I actually worked for Jared for a few months. And then we found a neighboring ranch it was a widow. She was going to lease her ranch out. And it was kind of everyone warned me against it, because it's kind of a mess down there with neighbors and everything they're all family there. Well, I ended up leasing that place. It ended up being probably one of the best things I ever did in my life, because we were able to just build our cow herd like crazy there, insane fast. And now, we run, it depends on the time of year. We'll run 600 cows or around there most of the time. And we try to maintain about 400, 500 cows, and the rest are kind of old broken mouth cows that we trade. But I don't know. I think the thing that's kind of got me to where I am is my wife's been pretty good about it. She kind of pushes me along and lets me do kind of what I want. But the thing that helped me out the most is I gained a really good friendship with the banker. And that guy, he would just say, if it pencils, just buy the cows or whatever. Just call me, let me know what you're going to do, and I'll put money in your account. And so I think one of the biggest things that ever helped me was just having a relationship with the guy that's going to give you the money. And it built, we built from 20 cows to what we have now. And it was all because of borrowed money. There's no way I could have done with cash. And I don't know, I lease most of my grounds, pretty much all but about 500 acres. I own 500 acres, and some government allotments I own also, but most of it's leased. And it's just from a lot of my leases came about just from getting around, and I talk to everyone. I see, and just, I always joke with these old ranchers, like, hey, lease me your place or some ground. And it's worked out quite a bit. It's where I find ground to lease just by hitting on those old guys and give me some ground to lease. But I don't know, I feel fortunate just to have what we have. But it's what I wanted. I wanted to ranch. It's just a desire, and I'm really not afraid to fail, because I always think, heck, I started with nothing, I can do it again. So what I would say is just don't be afraid. Just try it, because that's one thing I didn't want to do. I didn't want to regret never trying it, because I didn't want to be getting too old. You couldn't do it, and you're like, well, shoot, I should have done that years ago, but now it's too late. But so that's the main thing. That's the thing I try to drive into my kids. And I forgot to mention I have 6 kids, and all my kids are into ag. They're big. Like, I got boys that just want to train horses all day, and I try to tell that to them just if there's a risk, just take it, because the worst thing is you're going to fail. Who cares? We can just do it again. But I don't know. That's kind of my story. And it's stuff's getting expensive. It's pretty expensive, but if you make money on the dang things, you can make money. It's just, and we buy a lot of my cows are just trader cows. They're nothing special. We just put a herd together and I don't know. It's all worked out pretty good for us. I don't know. That might be all I got, but
That's good. That's good. Thanks, Zach. Appreciate that.
Yep.
So both you and Aaron, I mean, you're cowmen, you're cowboys, and would you say that the cows are, and maybe that's all but a lot of our listeners, they might be sheep or poultry or
Yeah.
pigs or whatever, but from a cow standpoint, how would you recommend that they get started in cows? How much land do they need to actually, or carrying capacity do they actually need so that they can quit their job in town and make it so it's a full-time thing and not just a real expensive hobby? Either how many head of cows, and just both of you can maybe answer that question. Go ahead, Zach.
I would think just to maintain, I know what it cost our family to live and what it cost to run those cows. About 300 cows paid, that we have could pay for years living and pay for the cost of the ranch, and the other 100 and 200 cows, that's a profit on the deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what I've penciled. But now it's just crazy because everything's getting higher every time. So it's just, I don't know, but that about 300 head, I think you could quit your job.
Okay. What do you think, Aaron, from your experience?
Yeah, I don't know. I would say 300 to 500, probably right in there. Yeah, and of course, a lot of it's going to depend on if you got the cow herd paid off, and you can probably have less. But if you're trying to make a cow payment and also live on them, I'd say you'd have to be over 300. But if you've got 300 paid off and you keep your expenses down, I'd imagine you could quit your job doing that.
Yeah.
I've probably, one thing and I don't have anything against guys that run smaller numbers, but but where I grew up in Utah, I just knew a lot of guys that ran 100 or 200 head of cows and had a town job. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I knew I always wanted to just do it full time. And so I've always tried to, at least run 300 or more,
Mm-hmm. So next question, would you recommend people start out leasing ground or finding a place to buy? You can answer that first, Aaron, and then Zach.
I would definitely say leasing. There's a huge advantage to leasing because you can typically lease a place cheaper than you can buy a place. I know when I came to Nevada, I mean, I think I was 25 when we came out here, and that's when I bought 500 head of cows. And when I was in Utah and I bought that place and we're running 350, I mean, I did all right on it, but my payments were double what a lease payment would do. And so I felt like it was kind of better that I getting out of that place in Utah, because it really helped me build my herd just leasing this big ranch out here. And I felt like I got further ahead faster doing that,
Yeah. How about you, Zach? What would you recommend, buy or lease to get started?
Lease, because like Aaron said, it's cheaper to lease the ranches and you're able to pay your cows off faster. And so once you have your cows paid for, then you can go buy a place and make the payments on that ground, Well, cow won't pay for it, but it'll help you. But yeah.
So another question here is, have you been able to get loans using cattle as collateral? And maybe how do you first get that first loan if you don't have anything but a dream? Zach, what?
Yeah, cows. I use cows for collateral quite a bit when I'll loan against cows for various stuff. But and what was the other part about how to get a loan?
Yeah, just can you use them as collateral? But I guess the first loan that you get when you don't own anything, and you don't really have collateral, just save up until you can get started, or?
Well, the Ag Credit has a thing now for youth ranchers, and so does so's the government, the FSA, the first time buyers, whatever, ranchers. And they'll, with no collateral, you can go buy, I don't know how much money they'll give you, but they'll give you money to buy cows or whatever for
Mhm.
a first time rancher. But it's hard if you go to just a bank and say, hey, I want to loan $200,000 to buy some cows, and they're like, well, what do you got? And you're like, well, a pickup, a couple of horses. They're going, I don't know about that, but
Yeah. What do you think, Aaron?
when you
Yeah, like Zach pointed out earlier, it's good to have a relationship with a banker. I know that really helped me. I found a kind of a small local banker where got to know him, and that's made a world of difference. He will use cows as collateral. I prefer to have my cows. Well, it doesn't. I guess it doesn't matter too awfully much, but when I first started out, I definitely used my cattle as collateral. I use my land now as collateral, and I have my cows free and clear. And I guess my reasoning on that is because, kind of like Zach, I'll buy and sell cattle occasionally, and it just makes it easier if there's a lien on your cattle. No, I'm not saying you can't buy and sell all the time, but yes, I mean, banks will use cattle as collateral. They will do that, but I know they like land a lot better because land can't disappear like cows can if you're not honest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another question: do any of you direct market? And if so, would the values be significantly lower? Meaning, could you make a living running less cows if you're direct marketing? Either of you want to speak to that, or if not, I can.
I don't do it much. So
Yeah, and I don't do direct marketing either.
Yeah. So Benton, yeah, in answer to your question, definitely. I mean, if you've got a higher margin enterprise, then yeah, you can run fewer head. And also is asking about what about cash flow? Anything you can do to increase cash flow with cattle? Maybe answer that, you guys, from, you guys, I would say you guys are fairly low cost producers. I mean, you kind of not necessarily follow the Kit Farrow genetics, but I think the philosophy of being low cost producers. Can you guys speak to that just a little bit of like how to make a profit even when calves are super cheap? So you're profitable every year.
yeah, I try to graze. Most of my cattle graze most of the year. They don't see much hail, but a couple like the older cows and like my young calves, my yearlings. But what makes me cash flow is just those trader cows I buy. The stuff I get rid of soon. I don't own very long, maybe a couple months, few months. Make a little profit on that, and just being low cost is. I mean, shoot, everyone makes fun of me in the valley because I do stuff different than them. I calve later, and I ship my cows out to winter range, and I think just run them as cheap as you can, but still make them so they breed. Just you can't be too hard on them, but hard enough that you make them work, and it saves you a lot of dang money.
Yeah. What do you think, Aaron? Thanks, Zach.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I know I run my cattle out year round. They run on the mountain all summer, out on the desert all winter. So that's yeah, I just don't have a lot of cost into them. Yeah, kind of like Zach, just run them cheap, and if times get a little tougher, I still even cheapen things up a little bit. I know, every time I do anything, I just figure, well, what's the value I'm going to get, and what's the return on my investment? So, like, I mean, I can drive 100 miles a day and never leave my ranch, and and if cattle need to be taken care of and doctored, I'll go out and do it. Or if I need to, go break ice in the winter, I do that for sure. But I also don't just go drive around just to check cattle, because I'm like, you know what, if I drive so far, and if, you know, the chance that I might have a sick calf, well, what's the chance? You know, a lot of times I'll just stay home and work around the headquarters and do things versus, I mean, I don't neglect my cows, but I just always, in the back of my mind, I'm always figuring that there's a cost to every time I drive out or do something. And I'm just always thinking, is that worth it? Is it going to return my investment, you know?
Yeah, that's good. Somebody's asking about marketing. What's your guys' opinion about marketing your livestock? Do you do anything special? Do you try to time the cycles or the market, and how do you sell your livestock? Aaron and then Zach.
So I just market everything through Superior. I just sell them by the semi-load, my calves. My cull cows, I'll either go directly to the kill plant with them or just to the auction. I don't have any secret recipe on how to market for premium at all, you know.
But I guess with you, Aaron, anything at any time is for sale. Is that right?
It is, yeah. Yep. And I do trade cattle too. But yeah, everything I own's for sale. I mean, if somebody wants, you know, 500 cows, 1,000 cows, I'll sell it to them. If my neighbor's got 500 cows for sale, I'll go buy them if the price is right. I'm willing to buy or sell anything, anytime, you know.
Yeah. What about you, Zach? Can you speak to the marketing a little bit?
Oh, it just depends on what the market's doing. Like this year we shipped with Superior on the video. Sold them in July, August, because the market was pretty high then. And then the rest of the calves went to a big feeder sale out in Fallon, Nevada here, February. It just depends. Some years I'll hold them over and sell everything after the new year. And then sometimes I'll just call up a guy and just say, "Hey, I got these," and he'll come pick them up and buy the whole herd of calves. It just depends. I'm not locked into anything ever. Just whatever's happening in the market.
Okay. Yeah. And overall, what would you say as far as marketing and being profitable? How important is marketing to the profitability of your ranches?
Oh, I don't know. I don't, it's, that's where all your money comes in most of the time. But I think like what's paid off with our calves is I went and worked for a guy in Nebraska, and we background like 8,000 calves every fall on his ranch. I learned a lot about getting calves over sicknesses and kind of gaining. And that helped me out a lot, because then the next guy who buys them, it goes out if you have bad calves.
Yeah.
And so I've had a couple guys, repeat buyers, and then call up and want to buy my calves again, just because when they got there, they never got sick. And so I think that part of marketing, waiting for the market to hit and then selling them then, but just having kind of a reputation that your calves aren't going to die on the next guy.
Yeah, that's good. How about you, Aaron? How important is it in the overall scheme of things, the actual marketing?
It's well, I don't know. It's important, but you can't control the price you're going to receive. And so, I mean, yeah, I want to get as much the highest price I can out of my calves, but I can't control that price at all. I would almost say it's more important you can control your expenses, but you can't control what you're getting for your calves. And so, I mean, yeah, it's important to try to market them. And I feel like I get better selling them on a video versus just the sell barn. But I think by concentrating on your expenses is more important than concentrating on your marketing. But I could be wrong on that too, though,
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it's what's worked for you guys, and that's, for the next guy, maybe they see it differently. But there's a couple questions here about negotiating and structuring leases. So it's fair and equitable, and it works for the tenant and the landlord. So specifically, what kind of terms do you negotiate? Do you pay on the front end? Do you pay by the month? Do you pay half up front, half at the end? Can you speak to that a little bit, Aaron?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess the places I've leased, I pay quarterly. Yeah, well, the one place they wanted it quarterly in advance, so every 3 months I'd make a payment. It was just a basic lease where I just paid. It was just a set amount, and I paid it every 3 months, and then I just, the agreement was I took care of my cattle. I had to maintain the fences. Just kind of keep the ranch up and going. I think it was only a couple of page lease, just real basic lease. The other place I've leased, it was pretty much the same thing. It was almost on a handshake. I don't even remember if we had something in writing or not. We probably did, but same kind of deal that the owner wanted just a lease payment in advance, month to month. I believe that one was. So yeah, that's how when I've leased a place. And then currently, like I mentioned earlier, I've got a ranch that I'm leasing out, and it's about the same thing. They pay quarterly in advance, and so every quarter they give me a check, and they take care of the cattle. They maintain the fences, do the irrigating. They do all the labor on the place. I think the only thing I pay are the property taxes. Other than that, they're responsible for covering all the other expenses and maintaining the place. But anyways, that's kind of how I've done it.
Anything to add to that, Zach?
Oh, not much. I've just had a couple, like current lease I have now, the biggest one is I pay half up front, half at the end of the year. Some of them I don't pay till the end of the year. They don't want me to pay till the end of the year. And those work out pretty good because they don't borrow any money around that stuff. You just sell your calves and pay that bill. But
yeah,
I don't know. It just depends on whoever the owner is always going to be a different situation, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. Somebody's asking, this might be definitely in a different context than Aaron and Zach, but how do you compete against row crop farmers and grain producers? There's definitely people willing to pay more for crop ground than they will for grazing. And so Jordan, I think in the West, that's not a big deal out here, but maybe speak to a little bit like who our competition is here in the West. A lot of ranches are being bought up, not for the carrying capacity of the ranch, but for their ability to apply for drought insurance and other government subsidized programs and things. And so that might be more of our direct competition here in the West. Would you guys think that?
Oh, definitely. That drought insurance is driving those prices up pretty high because, man, a guy can go buy pay for a ranch with drought insurance down the road, But yeah, that's probably one of our biggest ones.
But probably to Jordan's point, find out what is important to the landlord. If soil health is important and you can sell them on that, the cattle are the best way to be able to heal some of these worn out farms. Just graze and feed a lot of hay on them, build up your soil organic matter. If they're just looking at a straight cash and that's all they care about, it's probably not your right guy. Keep looking, I would say. But anything else, Aaron, that you think when you're kind of just overall negotiating a lease or because you're on both sides of it. Any other thoughts?
I don't. Yeah. I don't. I mean, kind of what you and Zach both said. That's kind of what I would say. I don't really have anything to add to that.
Okay. Well, I know you guys said you're not afraid to fail, and all of us that have ever started in agriculture have failed. If we're going to have livestock, we're going to have dead stock. We've all had those wrecks, would you guys be vulnerable enough to just share something where you failed and maybe the success of the operation hung in the balance, or where you thought, man, is this really question if this is really worth it?
Yeah. Well, I think last winter was pretty brutal on us out here in Nevada. We had snow. I mean, April 6th, we had 3 days of blizzard. And I don't start calving till April 5th, but you'll get those early calves the 1st of April. And we wiped out a bunch of calves. We lost through the winter, up until what was it, May? We had snow melt finally in May out there. I think we lost pretty close to 75 calves, and I lost 22 cows. The operation wasn't, there was nothing in that was going to be a big failure, but man, these were all cows I bought pretty much to trade calves out of in cows. And that was a rough one. That was pretty tough. I was like, man, that was kind of a dumb decision to buy those things and calve them. But it's something you learn from though. And every failure you should learn from. And so hopefully I learned from that one.
That's good. Thanks for sharing. Aaron's never failed, but
Oh,
that's Midas there.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, I could take hours telling you how all the money I've lost and all the failures I've had. I remember the first year I came to Nevada, I had 70 head of cows die on me. Last year, just like Zach said, I'd hate to even tell you how many I had die, but it was even more than Zach was talking about. But we were 10 days of riding day and night, through 2 to 3 feet of snow with tractors chained up, trying to get cattle gathered off winter ranges that were, 40, 50 miles long. But yeah, I mean, we had cows dying left and right, and it was definitely a big wreck. But there's nothing. I mean, you've got 2 choices: either go home and cry about it, or just move on with life. Then once they're dead, there's nothing you can do. Just kind of scrape back together whatever you can and just keep going forward. So but yeah, like Jared says, if you got livestock, you're gonna have dead stock at some point, and so that's just part of the game.
yeah. And I guess, for a lot of people, it's kind of hard to fathom those numbers, and they think, well, I mean, couldn't you just get out there and feed them? Give us a little context for like what your country is, Aaron, the vastness of it. And it's pretty typical of these Western ranches, the ranch that you operate, but from headquarters to where the cows were, and just some ideas about how big. And
yeah, so like my house is kind of on the south end of the ranch, and then it runs up to the north for about 50 miles or so, and it's all dirt road. It's all part of the ranch. And so we had a little over 2 feet of snow in 24 hours. And then from then we still kept having blizzards on and off for several days, for several months. We just kept piling up. But by the time, I mean, we went from hardly any snow to where typically we can graze our cattle out most winters. I would say, 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 10 years, 1 out of 5 years, you're going to have to feed hay. But we typically don't have that much snow that fast. I think last year we had over 10 feet of snow total. So, of course, that didn't all come at one time, but throughout the winter. But, when we had that 2 feet of snow in 24 hours, I took a tractor the next morning and I spent 24 hours just trying to get to my cattle. First thing I did was I had a 6-wheel drive Army truck, and I tried to drive out there to take him hay. And I just buried that truck, got stuck, couldn't go. So then that night, that took me all the first day. That night I came back, got a tractor, tried to plow my way out there. And I was in that tractor almost 24 hours, just between the front bucket. And I'm talking like a 250 horse, 300 horsepower 4-wheel drive tractor with a front end loader on it and a blade on the back. And almost for 24 hours, I was trying to dig my way out to the cows. And when I got out there, that we had such high winds, it drifted my whole road back in. And then then I had to keep plowing again. And then trucks, we had trucks chained up, but that wouldn't do any good. So we had other tractors chained up. I pulled all my kids out of school, hired guys, and we were dragging horse trailers out there with chained up tractors. Horses were giving out. They were belly deep in snow. And I mean, the range is, well, where the cattle were, it was, 30 miles long by 10 miles wide, no fences. Cattle were drifted all over the place. They were up in the hills trying to get out of the weather. I went and rented some snowmobiles. I flew it, but I mean, we were 10 days of day and night riding, trying to get cattle gathered. I mean, in between me and the kids, we had frostbit fingers and toes, and just pretty brutal just to get the cattle home. But they were, I mean, even after you got them found and got them heading down the road, we'd feed them, but cattle were just dying, dropping left and right as we were, we had to trail them home 20, 30 miles, and they'd make it part way and just die because they were so weak and so give out. And it almost was worse feeding them because, I mean, you'd feed them a little bit, but if you fed them too much, their bellies would get too full, and that even make them, then they had a hard time walking in for, trailing for 20, 30 miles. So yeah, just different country than probably what a lot of people are used to. So it's just, it was really just hard to get them gathered in that kind of situation,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think no matter what, if you're going to farm a ranch, you're going to have those experiences where it tests you and tries you. And just, yeah, really questions, is this the right thing? Why am I doing this? And, but what would you say, and this maybe the last question for each of you, but, why do you do what you do? Zach and then Aaron.
Oh, I do what I do because, man, it's nothing better than ranching. Nothing's better. I love it just because it's an awesome way to raise your family. There's no better way to raise your kids. And man, we're relying totally on our Father in heaven for everything. I mean, if moisture, good calf prices or whatever, but there's no better way to live. That's why I do it.
Yeah. Very good. Aaron?
Yeah, I just gonna echo what Zach says. I mean, we sure don't do it for the money. I mean, I've definitely done all right, but financially, but I just do it for the lifestyle. Like I said, when I was a kid, I was working for next to nothing for family, but I'd rather do that than go make a lot more money like my friends were, because that's just what I really enjoy and a great way to raise a family,
Yeah, agreed. For sure. Well, we surely appreciate both of you, appreciate everybody who's been on here today. And I know that we had a lot of people who maybe saw it on social media and signed up, but we do these things twice a month. And we have an upcoming virtual event I'm going to share. Invite you to go ahead and click on the link that's going to be in the chat. So this virtual event is for people who are either starting out or more seasoned farmers and ranchers, individuals who are looking to build a business, which we call a legacy business, because really, if the business is only profitable this year, or only profitable for this decade, it's really not much of a business. We have to build something that can outlast us. And so with what we do with our company at AgSteward, that's our focus. We even focus 7 generations into the future. And the decisions that we make now, how will they affect our posterity into the future? What is the legacy that we are going to leave, both from a business standpoint, from the work that we do on the land, from the livestock that we raise? We want you to take on that long view. And so to be able to facilitate that, we put together this class, and we invite you to join us. I put the link in the chat. This one, there is a cost to it. This is a $500 value class, but we have made it available for those who are joining these virtual events for $47. We encourage you to go and sign up right away. We have seats available. We've just opened this up, even though it's 2 months out. The dates for this are, I have to look, May 14th and 15th of this year. This is going to be a virtual event, and it is approximate times are about 9 to 3 Pacific time. So with that, encourage you to jump on that. And for those that are listening to the podcast that don't have the link, it's events.agsteward.co, and we'll put that in the link to the show notes for this and on YouTube and on the podcast channel. So we're grateful that you guys were able to join us. And this is the theme of a lot of what we do, is becoming better stewards of the land. Maybe I said that was a final question, but a lot of what our focus, we named the company AgSteward. I would like to get Zach and Aaron your definition of what stewardship is and what it means to you. Not a dictionary definition, but just, I consider each of you to be stewards of land, of your families, even of your fellow man. You guys are definitely men who, and your families are ones who are contributing members of the community. You look out for your fellow man. And so, yeah, would you guys like to take a stab at that, of what stewardship means to each of you?
Go ahead, Zach.
Okay. Well, stewardship means to me is, I think of every place I lease, I always want to leave it better. And I think the same as, my family. I hope I make an impression on them that makes them better. So I think being a steward is taking care of something and leaving it better than we found it.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. The scriptures teach us that the Lord owns everything, and we're really just stewards of the land. The deed or the title might be in my name on this land, but we were sent here to, to be caretakers. And I just feel like, we should, whether it's our land or our family or our businesses in town, we should just make it better than it was,
Yep. Yeah, that's very much in alignment with my definition of stewardship as well. That stewardship is greater than ownership. While we may own it for a temporary period of time, really we're just stewards, and somebody else will be the next steward. And we don't have to own it to be a steward of it. And I appreciate that you guys talked about that, how even leasing, we're stewards of it. And even, I think even we can be stewards of things that we don't even have a claim to by title or by lease. We can definitely leave our communities better